Good morning and hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Able Leadership Series interview. I am welcomed here today by Amin Mrini, who is the Chief Commercial AI Officer from Informa, one of the world's largest events and media businesses. Thank you very much for joining me this morning, Amin.
Thanks for having me, John.
So I'm going to slip straight into some questions. Most businesses globally now are using AI, and they're using it to do the same things that they've always done, but to try and do it in a faster or cheaper way. You've argued previously that the real opportunity is in what becomes possible when the cost of execution collapses. What do you mean for that? And what does that mean and open up for kind of mid-market and other businesses?
Yeah. So I think this idea of doing things for cheaper is incredibly short-termist and sort of monodimensional as a way of approaching or trying to unlock AI value. I think AI uh, is a multiplying force for productivity and output per person in ways that helps organizations think about new forms of demand, new products and services. And the goal should be dollars of revenue ARR, whatever the case might be, per head, as opposed to trying to minimize the head per dollar profit type equation. I mean, obviously, a cost impact is a one-off by definition, whereas a new product compounds over time. And for those who are thinking of AI as only as a cost-saving lever, although I'm pretty sure we'll have to go through a phase where that is primarily the benefit because it's easier to measure. I'm pretty sure that in any market, anywhere, there's either a bunch of AI native companies or legacy providers who have a better approach to AI, who are trying to unlock its value in the ways that I would describe it. And so ultimately being protective and thinking about cost only is a defense strategy that will ultimately affect your market share and your growth potential long term. Someone out there is trying to eat your lunch and is thinking new products, new services, new demand, new ways of distributing content, information, products, you name it. And so that's something that you have to be doing as well.
I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, we obviously speak to a load of people for different types of businesses in a range of different sectors. And there really is two distinct schools of thought here. There's what
Yeah.
you've just described, which is where's the opportunity? How can we use this disruptive new tech to really go on and grow and scale at multiples that would have been really difficult in the past? And then the other school of thought is the one that you're kind of arguing against, which is people going, well, okay, well, how can I save some money? And, how can I trim headcount? How can I improve process? Whatever it might be. And I think there are merits in both of those arguments, but certainly if you have got a growth mindset, then you surely are wanting to run at the opportunity that this has.
Yeah.
Have you got any examples of cool stuff you've seen people doing in that kind of field?
I mean, there's there's a very, very long list, thankfully. The the cost saving and frankly, I think the AI washing has dominated the media narrative. So you hear a lot more around job cut ways, primarily in big tech, which I think are more of an correction for over hiring than actual AI impact. But no, there's especially when you talk about mid market, there's plenty of small to medium sized companies who are, if not AI native, AI nimble, are thinking about talent and are thinking about developing these existing staff in exactly those ways of how do I increase output per person. And so there's in functions like sales, in functions like marketing, primarily, I would say there's a pretty clear blueprint starting to appear out there in terms of what does the AI stack or the new AI enabled ways of working and what these look like.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are trying really hard to create a really efficient and effective AI stack. And then there's a load of other businesses out there who are just bolting any AI tool they can find onto existing workflows. What we find is that just pushes the problems somewhere else, or it replicates the same problems that businesses already had. Have you, in your experience, taken the time to take that step back and redesign the flow around the new tech? And is that something you see people doing? Or do you see it as just, let's define a problem, let's find a tool that will solve it? What do you think is the best advice you can give to people?
Yeah, I mean, it's what half of my job consists of. Yes, I have. So I think we need to first of all we need to ban this AI use case term that people I hear everywhere. What's the use case here? So the task based approach of hey, let's brainstorm 100 different ideas and then build discrete AI tools which are mostly probably chatbots, and then hope for the best and hope that we are the more productive or I can take out 10, 15% of cost. It just doesn't work, right? So a simple example is, okay, I can create presentations more quickly, but if the decision and the meeting during which it takes place is still a monthly meeting, like you haven't saved time. No, you've just given you've just given people more time to either over polish an asset or just do other things that aren't necessarily going to be the things unlocking value. So this idea of the task based, let's automate these tasks or let's find the AI use cases, or frankly, thinking that giving a clue to everyone is a strategy for AI isn't going to anywhere. To anywhere. You might be in very, very tiny pockets, making people slightly more efficient at one thing, but then the value is only unlocked if you start chaining tasks, which is why we start talking about workflows. And then the reinvention piece to me comes from looking at the problem the opposite way. So in the past, companies have started thinking, what can I help humans do more quickly or more effectively or more cheaply, whatever the case might be? The question that I ask is, what do humans absolutely need to stay in charge of? And then once you protect that or you take that out, you delegate and find ways of giving the rest to AI. So what in this chain of tasks or sequences needs to be a human decision, a human approval, or needs to stay in the hand of someone to create an output and then handing that over, and everything else to the extent that it makes sense for the workflow in question. Obviously, there are accuracy problems, integration problems, compliance problems, and so on and so forth. But then the rest, to some degree, will be handed to an agent to perform these tasks. So look at the problem the other way around and simply thinking, how do I speed up outputs in the way things were done before with the humans that were in charge of that task before, is not where I value it at all.
And what would your advice be to people who are trying to decide where humans need to stay in this loop?
So this is where AI fluency comes in. So there's a base layer of judgment and just knowing your processes, knowing the level of risk you're willing to accept, knowing where the approval gate is or what your governance sort of framework dictates. Number one. And then there's not necessarily an intimate, but just good enough understanding of what AI is good at and the extent to which it can perform the task accurately or not. And so then if you understand what the limits of reasoning, the limits of accuracy, and then the what's good enough equation you're willing to accept. So if you're I don't know, if you're reconciling invoices, right? Where does the needle shift in terms of productivity if you're able to do the 20% of the hardest cases that are now being manually reviewed, 50, 80%, and then if you're left with just 20%, what does your team look like after that? So it's a combination of understanding the process, the needs for accuracy, risk profile of delegating to an agent, and then a good understanding of what AI does well, reliably or not, comes from experimentation. It's not something that you either have or do not have. Just try.
It changes all the time, right? Because, I mean, even in the past 48 hours, Claude has released a new model, which is slightly better than Opus 4.8. Is Opus 4.5 seems to be a lot better at certain things. And so it's constantly reviewing what the ability of whatever AI model it is, whatever AI tool you're using has got as well. What we talk about is we encourage people to use AI to do things that are repetitive, administrative, that don't require strategic thought, creative thought, or relationships. Because our belief, and one of the things that we say all the time, is that by using the tools that you now have at your disposal, it allows the humans to do things that they're really good at, that machines aren't so good at. So, and that for us comes back to strategy, relationships, creativity. And socializing is the other one, but that's kind of got a less business focus to it.
Mm.
Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I mean, look, on your first point, first of all, I don't think people should panic or read too much into the 4 to 6 week new model waves. I think they should look at capability improvement over a slightly larger window of say a year, 6 months to a year, not every cycle, because I bet you that the absolute vast majority, unless you are in healthcare looking at drug pipeline, unless you are in advanced engineering, unless you're Airbus, I guarantee you that the absolute vast majority of your processes do not require frontier models. And so, first of all, that comes with a cost advantage. And it also means that you don't need to worry about keeping up with the frontier and pay for state of the art. So models are increasingly I mean, look, it's looking like an exponential curve. It's confirming to look like an exponential curve. But on a day-to-day basis, for most of us and for most workflows, you're covered. I would spend more time thinking about how I ride the cost curve down than how I ride the capability curve up for a given workflow. That's the first point. And then a good idea to start with what is repetitive, codified, has got the right context layer around it to make sure that you're making the right decisions or performing tasks in the way that you want. As it relates to strategy and creativity, because I mean, obviously, creativity is intrinsically a human attribute. So I don't know that it's even the right word, but when it comes to strategy as a hands-off, tell me what I need to do, probably not. But as an accelerant for humans, same thing for ideation, brainstorming, prototyping. So it's not, I wouldn't call that creativity, but not far from it. Increasingly, I find AI to be very, very capable, and there's more and more things where I start with an idea and then I'm given the utmost sophisticated hyper refined version of the idea that it would probably have taken me a while to maybe not even find. So on those, what is belongs to humans? How long does that remain and to what extent? I think ultimately it's not a AI, non AI. It's a can I comfortably outsource to AI and then there's something that requires an AI and human pairing more so than not AI. I don't think there are many not AI fields apart from obviously well human contact relationships and so on and so forth.
I like the way you've described it as an accelerant. Um, that's certainly something that I do myself personally, to use it to either get an idea off the ground or to refine an idea and move it through my thought process quicker than I would have normally done before. So I
Yeah.
like that description. It's really good. There's a lot of noise out there about how do people measure the return on value of any AI tools they're buying, right? And there's loads of stats out there from Deloitte and Forrester and McKinsey and various other places about 94% of businesses aren't seeing any return on value. You've said previously that without measuring the baseline first, you'll never be able to prove that AI has delivered an upside. So thinking about kind of the smaller businesses here who may not have a dedicated data team or a team that are in-house to do that kind of measurement, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not in a way like it's just BAU, right? I mean, when you're launching a new product, you're accountable for how it performs or how it changes the customer journey, satisfaction, financials, you name it. So there's nothing new there. You need to have an ability to attribute a success metric and to track how KPI X, Y, and Z evolve with the introduction of AI inside of a process. So your say you're automating content creation, right? For a certain flow, for a certain persona. You need to measure throughput, you need to measure content interactions, views, clicks, time on site, repeat visits, and so on and so forth, right? So the baseline thing is make sure that you start with a clear understanding of where your KPIs are, because otherwise, how would you ever see an uplift if you don't know what the status quo looks like? So it's not there's nothing more sophisticated than what anyone introducing a new product, introducing a new service has had to do over the past Y number of years. Yes, there are attribution is difficult in some cases. There's the causation versus correlation problem. In my experience, it's pretty clear whether it's working or not. You can't do without the numbers, but I haven't had a hard time getting comfortable with the numbers, even when it's a partial view or even when you can't fully close the attribution loop, because done well, we're talking about, I mean, there's nothing I've done that was such a tiny incremental gain that we weren't quite sure it was worth it. Like there's so much to be redesigned, so much to be rethought. If you're starting with the things that are driving the extra 0.01% and that you're not quite sure is within the margin of error, I would argue you're probably not starting at the right place. So it's not
Brilliant.
as complicated, I would think, I would presume, than what you could make it sound like.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I like what you said there. I mean, if you bring any new tool, system, process in, you need to measure it. This is no different. Just because it's more technical in nature doesn't mean it has to be hard.
No, AI value debate uh, comes from uh, an idea that is still very present, which is, yeah, I have an AI strategy. I've given everyone GPT or Claude. And so you're like, okay, so everyone's burning tokens. If you just say everyone's going to access as a free for all, then by definition, you're not quite sure what you're trying to achieve. What are you trying to achieve? If your strategy is, okay, everyone be more productive. Here you go. Here's a chatbot. Well, what are you trying to shift? Everything all at once, or some intangible form of we should be more productive, or we could do more with less, or we could. So that is impossible to, right. So the strategy of I want to rethink this workflow, and I want to increase the throughput of my sales team and bring the cost, the conversion down. I want to bring conversion up. I want to drive pipeline growth of X%. I want to be able to manage a book of business with 20% less sales reps, and then the other reps will be doing something else. That is something that you can measure. So people have approached it from a general purpose. Let's have fun and let's trust people to sit there and just reimagine their jobs by themselves as they do it. So it can't be everyone's responsibility to rethink. Now everyone now says reimagine the workflow. It can't be an individual contributor's responsibility day in day out. No one wakes up and thinks, how do I rethink my job? So it's the approach and how AI was deployed that is creating this fake debate around AI value, and also because people, for some reason, thought that burning tokens was a sign of pride or something that equates AI fluency or literacy or just being. So um, the way of unlocking AI value is clear. Now I hear the recipe is just so obvious. It almost sort of pains me to have to say it, but I still hear on some pretty big podcasts out there saying, "Oh, now genius, stroke of genius, very small teams, engineering capability, sitting down with the functions, and then embedding AI behind the scenes inside of operations. So you bypass the whole adoption challenge, you bypass the whole change management challenge." And and you preserve your ability to chain and transform whole sequences. So you need technical fluency. It can't be everyone's responsibility. You need to have people accountable for that change. You need to have people embedded within functions for that change. That's why we have the whole FDE craze and mania right now, and all the deploy codes and consultancies rebranding themselves. So there's a clear way of unlocking value. The debate just stems from a complete lack of strategy as to how AI was deployed.
Because that's really interesting. It's something that we've spoken about a lot with some other people. And there are a variety of different ways that people are deploying it. Sometimes it sits with the CTO, sometimes it sits with the COO, sometimes it sits with the CHRO, and
Yeah.
treating it more as an HR kind of adoption challenge. And I think there's probably merits in all of those.
Mhm.
Having accountability is important when you're trying to do anything in business.
Yeah.
That's an absolute given. But your suggestion there that you break it down into segments, again, very sensible in most schools of thought, and then trying to go into the teams, understand their challenges, and then embed it on a piece by piece method seems very logical to me.
Yeah. And so whoever it sits with, it needs to come with the realization that really can't sit with one function, right? So technology is responsible for technology. So the moment an AI team sits in technology and is responsible for reimagining processes and rewiring processes, like technology is not responsible for the entire process wiring across functions in the business, nor is HR, nor is anyone. So first of all, the mandate, the story told around AI, the investment behind AI, and what the company is trying to unlock via AI, it needs to come from the CEO. That's number one. And then number two, yes, the AI function needs to sit somewhere, unless it's a direct CEO report. It tends to be in technology, but it needs to come with the realization that, okay, it's in technology because the engineering skill set, the product skill set, the delivery skill set tends to be there, fine. But it needs to come with the realization that every function is responsible for the outcomes that AI engineering or re-engineering is unlocking, and that function is a partner. It doesn't own the entirety of the business process outcomes across functions. It just can't work like that. And so there's a level of AI fluency required in non-technical functions. There's a level of AI engineering capability that is required outside of technical functions as well. So there's a bit of a rewiring of the organization, if not in the org chart, at least mentally, that's needed.
Yeah, yeah. I I couldn't agree with you more. And that you've mentioned it a few times. The idea of AI fluency across the board is so important. And it's how do you enable people? How do you help people to become AI fluent? And that comes back to the way you adopt it, training and development, same stuff as always. You've mentioned previously, a couple more questions. We mentioned previously about AI squeezing the capable generalist. What do you mean by that?
I think it was the pseudo generalist. Um, uh, Look, I think there's a profile in quite common in most organizations of someone who's in charge of coordinating and managing without owning a domain expertise. So when the cost of execution was high and when domain expertise was quite siloed, you needed the manager, someone sitting atop, coordinating, scheduling meetings, reporting, making sure that the handover between those different silos was managed effectively. Those silos are getting closer to one another, and in some cases they are merging, and execution isn't scarce anymore. It doesn't need to be micromanaged as the rare occurrence in the business of it's so hard to make things happen that I need 3 layers of management to make sure that people know what to do and are doing it well. Those without a really deep domain expertise and those without the judgment to be proficient across domains, to me, are going to lose value. And so either you're a hyper deep domain expert who is able to challenge AI output, to refine AI output and to see mistakes or inaccuracies or to help advance AI output, or you're someone who's able to bring down the frontiers between functions. So a product manager who's technically fluent enough to be able to prototype, to be able to look at design, to be able to look at research, to be able to look at launch planning. For example, why would you need a UX designer, a product designer, an engineer, a sales enablement specialist, and a marketing manager today to launch an AI tool? I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's how I've built my team. So you could compress those 5 or 6 roles into 2 or 3, if not more. So I think we're entering the age of the hybrids. I think AI augments exactly those profiles, and those are the people who will thrive. Those who combine one deep technical domain expertise with the ability in the synthesis to operate across domains. And so by extension, those who aren't particularly hands-on, first of all, those who aren't individual contributors, and those who are just the lubricant between layers of an organization that is collapsing, that will flatten out over time, will lose relevance.
So, I mean, I've heard this. I can't remember what it was about 10, 15 years ago. I was working in a sector and people were talking about the demise of middle management, which is
Yeah,
similar to what you're talking about here on
yeah.
that lubricant layer. And I think you could be right this time. I would imagine, so you've done this, so great question to ask you. I would imagine hiring genuine hybrids at this moment is quite hard. Is that right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, it's very hard. It's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah. I wish I had the recipe and be more successful at it. Look, the good news is we're about to find out, right? You have companies like Block, for example, who have decided that they could do the same job with 40% less people, no middle managers, context and information layer entirely managed with AI, which effectively is the equivalent of replacing that layer of coordination of meetings, of information gathering and information sharing. So, and they're not the only one. So we will find out pretty quickly whether the thesis is right or not. So both things can be right at once, right? We could see a rise of the new hybrids without losing those middle management positions for a while. We'll find out. But to come back to your question around, I mean, unfortunately, there's nothing new there. So, and importantly, in terms of hiring good people, I think hybrids, there's always been hybrids out there. An AI augmented hybrids is a much better hybrid, hence the point that I'm making. Having one helps you find the second, and then having two helps you find the third, and so on and so forth. The profile of the hiring team, to me, is the biggest differentiator in terms of finding the next best person for that, and that fits the bill because people with that skill set want to work with people that have it, recognize it, value it. Obviously, it doesn't solve the n and an n plus one, fine, but it doesn't solve the first. In most cases, you won't find those people, and if you find them, they're quite rare. So ultimately, it's a lot more of an upskilling training. How do I assess performance as it relates to AI usage, and how do I upskill my own team on AI usage to transform your people into these hybrids? Like, just you won't just start clean slate and find a new full team of hybrids out there. If you find a small number of them, use them to upskill your team. And ultimately, I'm pretty sure that upskilling is more important than hiring, just purely based on volume and time that it takes to churn and then replace. So I don't have a magic recipe. The ways to interview, the channels for hiring that work well, word of mouth, being constantly out there, interviewing, meeting people, whether you have open positions or not, to build a pipeline, because you never bump into the right people when you need them, unfortunately. And then trusting that once you're able to create that culture and bring that skill set, great attracts great.
Yeah, great advice. So look, we're out of time, but I'm going to ask you the final question I ask everyone on these, which is: there's someone watching this. They are at the start of their AI adoption journey. They are a senior leader in a mid-market organization. They're not as advanced as you. What would be your single piece of advice to them about how they take on this opportunity and challenge?
I mean, it's hard for me to pick one. So start with simple but transformational goals, right? So there's a lot. If you're starting from scratch, by definition, there is a lot of low hanging fruits that can transform productivity in terms of either your commercial performance, your product performance, you name it. But simple, clearly stated and measurable goals. You won't transform the organization in one go. And again, giving people individual tools isn't going to achieve that. So do not underestimate the engineering challenge that represents. Invest in that technical capability, and then embrace that, which is now commonly referred to as the FTE model, which is embedding a very small number of capable engineering and product talent within functions, and then drive the change from within that function, and think about AI behind the scenes. The less AI you see, the better for productivity. You're not building tools for the masses, and then everyone spend their day on 4 or 5 for every task that calls for a new tool type thing. So in terms of ways of thinking, how to approach, how to deconstruct the problem, and then the right model for unlocking AI value, those would be the main advice.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, we really appreciate it, and wishing you and Inform the best of luck as you use AI to forward your business even more over the coming months and years.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.